Hey, what's going on? It's Doug Cunnington here, and welcome to the Doug.Show. In this episode, we're going to talk to Marty McLeod because his site is making, or at least his sites are making around $5,000 plus per month, hence the mention of a $150,000 site as far as a 30x monthly multiple valuation. So that's pretty cool. You probably, hopefully remember Marty from his other appearances on the show. So he was all the way back, I had to look this up, episode 2 and then episode 21. So if you haven't heard those, I highly encourage you to go back and have a listen. Those are success stories from back in the day, but it's cool to listen to people's success stories over time. So in this case, you can hear what it was like when Marty was making a few $100s per month and how excited he was. Now he's making a lot more than that. His site is a few years old. He has a couple sites that we talk about, and we talk about content. We talk about link building. He's quit his job in the last few months and all those sort of things. So really cool to follow along with Marty and hear his story. There's links in the description and show notes so that you can check out the podcast episodes. There's actually video of these interviews as well. So if you like Marty, like I like Marty, then you'll want to check those out as well. We also got a question that I'm going to answer at the end. Mike, longtime friend of the show as well. Mike asked about building more than one site in the same niche and then some of the other details around that. So we'll answer that at the end. And before we go on, I do want to mention that my course, my premium course, 5-Figure Niche Site, is open for enrollment if you are listening to this episode in the time frame of like January 13th through the 17th of 2020. So I launch the course every now and then, and you may notice that I'm publishing some of these success stories from students to maybe encourage people that listen to the show, but they haven't pulled the trigger yet to check out the course. So there's a link in the description. If you happen to be listening to this episode in the future, I launch the course 4 different times a year, each quarter. So typically it's like January, April, July, and October. I also have an evergreen funnel in place. So if you're not signed up for the email list, you can sign up for the email list. And then when the time's right, I will offer that to you as part of my whole automation sequence out there, which I can probably talk about someday. It's kind of interesting to have an evergreen funnel in place and market things via email. I enjoy that kind of thing. So anyway, I'm going to send it over to the interview with Marty, and I will answer some questions at the end. Hey, what's going on? It's Doug Cunnington here, and I'm with Marty McLeod. How are you doing today?
I'm really good. I appreciate it.
And Marty's a longtime friend of the show. He's a student in 5-Figure Niche Site. He's done some writing for Niche Site Project. And Marty and I actually got to have a meal together, shake hands, and meet face-to-face back in Atlanta. So that was a pleasure to meet you, Marty.
Yeah, likewise.
Super cool to like finally meet you in person after many hours of just chatting and interacting and that sort of thing. So very cool. Before we dig into it, I like to just get to the amount of money that you're making. So people are like, should I listen to this dude or not? So can you share some of your recent earnings and kind of where you're at? Just ballpark range.
Yeah, so I need to be sure to, since I'm running ads now, I have to mention both things. So October was my highest point of 2019, and it was like $4,100 something just for Amazon earnings between my 2 sites, with the majority being in my main site. And then that month and this month, I got over like $1,100, $1,200 in ad revenue on top of that.
Okay. So roughly 5,000 per month or so. Okay. Yeah. And we will back into some of the other details, but one thing that was surprising, you and I were chatting just before we hit record, and I think you probably should have made more in November and December. You didn't have any traffic issues, but you were doing some A/B testing, some conversion rate,
right,
optimization, exactly, and that impacted your earnings, right?
Yeah, because the whole thing is you don't know what's going to help and what's going to hurt you actually carry it out. And it was also multiple pages. It was on the top 10 pages. Therefore, those are the highest traffic pages. There's going to be a negative effect that's going to come out in lower earnings. But that was temporary. And the whole goal was to have them work on it and find out what works and what doesn't, and get back on track as soon as the 3 months or so period wrapped up.
Sure. Okay, cool. So that aside, you didn't have any algorithmic issues or penalty. It's just a thing that was going on, and we'll come back to that later because we're telling a nonlinear story in a extremely nonlinear way,
Sure.
which is totally fine. So for the people that don't know you, can you let us know your profession, kind of your history, how'd you get into niche sites and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I'm an Auburn graduate, Auburn University, and my background is electrical engineering. My degree's in that, but I've also done electronics, embedded systems, and code for electronic boards. My last job, that's what I did full time. And I joined your course somewhere around midway of 2017. Started my first site at that time, and I believe my first one I got it rolling in, I think it was June or early July of 2017. So we're somewhere over 2.5 years or so for the main one, and then just a little bit less time for my second site. And it's been a progressive thing. And as of before my birthday, July of 2019, I hit my goal where if I wanted to, I could leave my job. So I thought about it, hard decision, but all the signs pointed to yes. And so September was my last day working full time. So
awesome.
I'm free now.
Congratulations. I know, in fact, I was just talking to someone today and they were like, is it everyone's goal to quit their job? It's a younger guy, younger than us anyway. And he's sort of at the beginning of his career, a lawyer, in fact, so a professional, very intelligent guy. But he was like, is everyone just trying to quit their job? And I don't know. So it depends on each individual. I wasn't trying to quit my job, but I eventually got laid off. When you guys started with this stuff, Marty, were you thinking, hey, I want to quit my job? Or you were like, hey, this is fun and interesting?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I was with a burning passion. I wanted to leave in engineering, which is unfortunate because originally it was something I really liked as a hobby and learning on my own. But it wasn't too long after a couple of years of working professionally, I just felt so trapped, and having to change jobs and living in different cities just to get more money and feeling so trapped. I just very, very passionately wanted to finally get free. And when I found out that was possible on the internet, other people doing it, that was amazing to me. And that just fueled the fire even more. So that's how I got down this path to begin with.
Okay. And how many years of engineering work did you have under your belt at that point?
Probably, gosh, let's see, that's 15, 20 or something.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. So it's kind of funny from where I have a similar degree, computer engineering. So I took a bunch of EE classes. I got into management consulting because maybe I wasn't as good of an engineer or something. I'm not sure. But what I observed was, number one, when I looked at the people that were 15 years ahead of me, I was like, well, I don't want to do that. I'm like, if that's the goal, that doesn't seem right. And then the other part is long hours. Even if you did really well, you were looking at pretty small bonuses if you got one at all, and very small raises. So I see you nodding, but can you describe your situation? And then how do you feel when you have a job where you're I'm smart, I'm accomplishing a lot, and then I'm not getting rewarded for it?
That's very discouraging. And that alone is not great, but a lot of times my personal experiences were that I had that, plus also I had other things on top of that, like my opinion doesn't count, burning out from just repeatedly working on late hours, working on frustrating technical stuff and on some weird design, and I'm stuck with it and just hating the work. So for me, it was a number of things, but that is definitely a big factor, because I could look back now seeing this is possible to make even more money than I ever would as an engineer, which is crazy, because this is actually more enjoyable. It's easier work. It's fascinating that you get rewarded your being motivated, making your own decisions, win or lose, the payoff can be huge as opposed to engineering, where just like you said, and just only a few jobs where any kind of bonuses available at all. And, cross your fingers, you might get just a tiny raise if anything at all.
Yeah. Yeah, it's ridiculous. And then we'll move on from us complaining about the corporate world. But basically, I remember actually most of the companies that I worked for, they're like, oh yeah, if you come up with a great idea, maybe you can get a patent. But the company owns it. So you get like maybe a tiny bonus, which is nowhere close to the value of the patent. Sure, the company may be able to push the patent in a certain way, but like when they were telling us about it, I was like, oh yeah, like you get all this recognition, but like the payoff is like nothing overall. So I don't know, the whole system's broken. Nah, I don't know. That's going a little too far. There's a lot of hard stuff about what we do. The cool thing, right? At this point, you make your own decisions. So how challenging is that to figure out like what to work on, how to do things, and so on?
Personally, I think when you're a beginner, it can be kind of hard. But once you got the ball rolling and you've got a better understanding of things and you've got more experience and some success, I think personally, I feel like it becomes more clear and it becomes easier. At this point, it's just mostly that I had a good work ethic when I was doing it in my spare time. So I built those good habits. Now it's just more of the same. And then the more I learn from other people too, I begin to get a clear picture of what I should be spending my time and effort on, or I like to use the word resources because it can be a lot of things, time, money, blah, blah, blah.
Sure. Cool.
It's gotten easier though, I feel like.
Awesome. And I think we'll move more towards like the nuts and bolts of your site. And first off, how many sites do you have?
I do have 2. I have my main one. You could accuse me of being slightly overambitious when I started. The second one, somebody recommended I do it, but it was a good idea because it's a little bit extra money too. And now I can grow that site, which I couldn't do before. I had to focus, decide where to spend my time before.
Okay, cool. So you have 2 sites, and how old is each one?
So yeah, the first one is the one I think it's roughly 2.5 years, and the other one would be about 2 at this point. Yeah.
Okay, so you got the other one started pretty quick, just 6 months in, probably to get some age in there, and you were thinking, hey, why not?
Yeah, later on that year, once the first one, or it's been such a long time. I had asked somebody about things, and he said, well, I know their affiliate marketing, who I know, and he suggested that I do that. And it happened to be something that used to be a hobby and part-time job I had before I got out of college, my hometown, or when I worked in my hometown part-time. And so it was an idea. I thought, well, I can start the side, and if it doesn't work out, it's okay. I still have my main one. It was almost biting off more than I could chew at the time. So that's why I tend to caution people now about doing that.
Yeah. No one believes us, but then after they do it, then they end up realizing that it's too much. I have at least 3 or 4 sites that just sit there. They're aged, they're years old, but like I still haven't gone back because at some point it's work, right? After you do something for a while, it's work. And I'm like, I could like go to the gym or go walk outside for a little while instead. So I usually do that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm lazy. So, well, for that initial site, we'll just focus on one site for now, and then I may pepper in some other questions about the second site. But for the first site, are you making the majority of the money from that one site?
I calculated that roughly 91%. So just to say 90% about that.
Cool. So perfect. We'll just focus on that main part. How many pieces of content are on the first site, and how did the content come about?
I just hit post number 100 about a week and a half, or maybe 2 at the most. I go just finish up some more product reviews. So I started off with the sprint of 10, like you recommend in your course, and then just went from there. Whenever I could, I just had to do the best I can on such limited free time. Spent most of my weekends where, especially starting off, I was much slower at writing content because I wasn't a very good writer at the time. So it took me a long time, but let's say we get out on a good month, I could get out 4 to 6, maybe. Depends on what kind of post. And until I got more faster, and then I could get might get 2 or 3 on a weekend. I had to do a lot of it on the weekend, or at night.
Cool. And during this like period of time, you're working like 40 to 60 hours a week?
It was definitely at least 40, and sometimes I'd stay late at night. Well, I should, you're not supposed to, but every once in a while I squeeze in working on my site at work.
Yeah. No one watches these. So I never did that because I was doing this on the side as well. So I never did that, but I did work remotely. So I always had like a second laptop or whatever. So if I did personal stuff, because I was like, I want to make sure I'm not doing anything on my work computer. I don't know if you did that. Don't answer it. But basically, like if you work remotely, usually you have a lot more free time. And you actually went into an office though every day, right?
Every day. Yeah.
Okay. And we'll keep focusing on the site. So you have about 100 pieces of content. So I think this is a good point because I literally just answered a question today. Someone was like, well, how many pieces of content do I need to make, say, $1,000 per month? And, some people may say 300 posts. They have like astronomical number of words, but you're saying you had 100 pieces of content, and that is basically making you, if I do the math right, like $4,500 per month, roughly.
Right.
Okay. And I would argue potentially, right? We will never know because we can't go back in time. But I think if you didn't do the CRO testing in November and December, like your earnings would be like a lot higher. So more like 8,000 per month if I just had to estimate. So, so from your observation, you don't have to have as much content. You have 100 pieces. Can you tell us a little bit about like how you format it and how long it is, images, all that kind of stuff?
So honestly, sometimes mine are too long, but it's just because I honestly try so hard to put in some really good stuff. But basically, mine easily are about 2,000, 2,500. Let's say let's use the example of a buyer post, because the info post is a different case altogether. It'll be 2,000, 2,500, and I'll have sections with the general content like, what is this product? How does it work? What does this do? What is the best? Yada, yada. A lot of those I have in there. I'm getting ahead of myself. I start off with an intro table of contents that's very clear and easy to click on. And then I go into the general content section, and then I have my product tables, if it's a, say, best X or Y post. And then I have my detailed product sections after that. And I basically, each one of those is, all my posts are very similar to each other. It's that general layout, for example, for a buyer post. And you could say likewise for a single product review or an info post. I have a general similar style that's fairly consistent.
Okay, great. And as far as like images and stuff like that, for example, I see you have some lighting set up behind you. So you're taking some some images yourself, right?
Yeah, definitely. So I got an inexpensive light stand, or a couple of light stand sets from eBay, and I got some good bulbs, which is another learning experience. And for single product reviews, my main niche is fairly competitive, and there's a lot of sites up there. It's, for some reason, it's one of the ones that a lot of people think of first. So I needed some kind of advantage, and I think I heard like Stuart Walker or someone like that mentioned one time that they actually buy the product to take pictures. And in a lot of cases, part of this was I couldn't find good images from the manufacturer or whatever the case might be. There might just not be any out there. But it's something I really wanted to dig in and say, what can I do to set my site apart? And so I said, okay, why don't I give a shot buying one of these? And I'll take my own pictures. And I started off with just my old Sony camera phone I used to have. The camera was pretty bad, but I made it work. And people responded well to that. And then I thought, well, I'd like to do an even better job. So I got some light stands, and you got a little table, and I could take little pictures of the products, and I take very detailed products. Now I have a better phone, much dramatically better camera, so I can do even better and not have to edit it quite as much, fix it. And it was mainly trying to be a step ahead above the other guys, because a lot of my competition, they don't care about quality at all. All they do is put out garbage. They're just trying to get your clicks. I really want to deliver what people are looking for and answer their questions. Is this good or not? And then I wanted to also do it in a way that makes my site look authoritative. You can trust it. So that it makes a huge difference,
Okay. Do you have any other tips for content or making someone's content stand out?
Yeah, because I've seen so many different sites by this time, and after having changed the way I do it now from when I started off. So there's an article on your website about secondary keywords. So that helped me a lot for making the content longer, not just because I'm trying to fill it in with something, but it's a section. I'll take a secondary keyword and use that to make a section in content that actually contributes something to the reader. That fills in that necessary space if say it was going to be very short otherwise. But generally, I try to lay things out in a way where it's easy to read, easy to find where you're going. If it's just information, there's a table of contents, there's clear H2s. Everything's sectioned off. It's not too long. Break it up, make it easy to keep up, especially on your phone, on a smaller screen. And then product related stuff, I make it easy to find what I recommend, easy to know what to click on, a call to action, either a link or a button, whatever it may be. Good pictures as much as possible, things like that.
Okay. And it's funny when you mention it, a lot of it just seems kind of obvious, but like when you're in the trenches and you're thinking, I need to publish more content and you have a big list of keywords, people can get overwhelmed and overdo it, underdo it, like all the things that you mentioned. It's not necessarily trivial to, find a solution for like tables or the table of contents or et cetera. So with that said, we'll sort of move on to like link building and stuff. So as far as link building, outreach, promotion of your site, what work have you done there?
So the last time we spoke, I think you had asked me something like that. But basically, I had done what was recommended in your course, and then I had some guest posts. So because that's been an area where I've been really lacking, and I kind of felt unsure about it. I had actually just finished Matt Diggity's course, where there's a huge section about outreach. So I'm going to be implementing that pretty soon. I mean, that's the best answer I have right now, because there was so much that I didn't know, and now I have the information about how to take the right approach this time. I plan to start doing outreach on my own pretty soon and try to do as good of a job as possible. And some of the examples I'll learn,
Cool. At this point in time, how many like guest posts or backlinks do you have to your site?
Let's see, because that's actually part of one of the housekeeping things I have to do is get everything documented clearly. 35 or 40, I guess, at this point, or something.
Okay.
Not that much. I'm probably really forgetting a lot.
Sure.
Oh.
Okay. So you have a handful, a couple dozen. So it's pretty, I think one thing I want to emphasize is outreach can be hard, right? Especially when you're first getting started. But also you don't have to have that many, like per month. So you've been at it for a couple of years or so. If you just get like one guest post per month or one link per month, over time that adds up. That's 24 in a couple of years. If you, try a little harder, you can double that. If you're trying to get a lot of links in a short period and do a campaign, and I know a lot of people are just in a rush, but if you just step back, take your time, it's not so bad. It's not as intimidating, but there are other people who are like, I'm sending out 100 emails a day, which I hate getting those emails, by the way. I mark them all as spam, everyone, by the way. So when you're sending them out, they're being marked as spam a lot of times. So I also want to, number one, I'll mention, I should probably get Matt on the show so we can talk about his course and stuff like that. I haven't talked to him in a while. But I guess I'll just ask you, were the techniques in 5-Figure Niche Site like not sophisticated enough, too boring? Were you having trouble with conversions? Like, where's the gap between like Matt's course and his outreach?
Well, for example, I hope I can answer this question appropriately. Let's see, and very well. So in theirs, I actually had outreach specialists who created that information, not Matt in this case. So they had everything from examples of outreach emails to data and percentage about typical conversions. And I think it was just the specific information that's probably, that doesn't mean that what was in the 5-figure niche site wasn't good. I'm not saying that at all. Just that this was like, I hadn't seen these numbers before, or here's some other ideas that I hadn't gotten before.
Cool.
And somebody who actually works in that business, in this case, this was Ninja Outreach, people from Ninja Outreach saying, here's what we do to show you, like that.
Gotcha.
If that makes any sense, Marty.
Yes, it does. So it's like a little more data in there. And yeah, I'm not necessarily trying to defend my course, but because I know the stuff works, so I'm comfortable with that. However, there are many different ways to present information.
Right.
Funny story. I know the founder one of the original founders of Ninja Outreach. So it's a small world. I know he sold it. They sold her. He got bought out or some kind of situation like that. But anyway, yeah, crazy. I need to catch up with that guy too. So you're going to sort of refocus on link building. And why were you, I guess, hesitant to put more effort into it previously?
This goes back to, and a lot of what I talk about is based off where I was before, because it was until just recently I was working a full-time job and even spending late nights sometimes. So I had such limited time. I'm hard pressed to decide what I'm going to do, because let's be honest, when your site is, one thing was my site was gaining momentum and organic traffic rising gradually. So I said, well, I just want to keep focused on putting out content, especially when I was having a lot of the using a KGR and a lot of the low competition keywords posts were ranking without links. It happened quite a few times. So that is kind of what it says, well, maybe you can put that off until later. And it was kind of a case like that,
Okay.
And part of it, honestly, was me not feeling too confident about how I would go about things. I can honestly say that had a lot to do with it,
Okay. And you are not alone. I've been doing success story interviews this week with students, and generally it's exactly what you said. So it's over and over again. It's like, I know if I spend X amount of time or money on a piece of content, I'm pretty confident, because I've seen the past results, that it's going to work out. But there's a disconnect between the guest posting, even though I prescribe in the course to follow along moving forward. At best, people will do, what you did, maybe get 30% of the 30 to 40% of the links as compared to the content. Generally, I'm trying to get those to go like 1-to-1. So you do a sprint of content, sprint of link building, but a lot of people just don't. They're like, I got a couple links, nothing happened. But the cool thing is, after someone does some link building for a little while, and by the way, I think your 30 to 40 guest posts out there probably like are very good and are helping your site. Like, I think there's some baseline. Once you reach that, you're probably in good shape. But I'm sure you've looked at some competition where content subpar, everything's subpar, links outstanding, and they have a lot of them. So you're nodding. You've seen that out in your competitors.
Yeah, sometimes disappointingly so.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I find like I had some experiences where it was like, people have just poor content, not much content, but a ton of links because that's what they're good at, versus having a lot of content that is high quality with no links. And I think somewhere in the middle, I don't know where, but there's some balance where you have a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So I try and just like mix it together 50-50. As far as resources, time, however you're classifying like your efforts. So with that said, do you have any specific goals on like links or guest posts or whatever moving forward?
But basically that I want to do the foundation as far as one thing I learned from got the idea from here recently was that I should have been tracking very closely my anchor text ratios, my links, and all that. And that's where I really messed up from the beginning. So I don't just want to go out and do more, but I want to do it the right way. That is a major goal. Those two together, because those are, interwoven. Yeah, definitely.
Very good. And so there's no specific goal of like X number of links over the next year or anything like that?
No, I didn't have a number like that yet. That's
okay.
a good question. I have to think about it.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. I mean, most of the time it's like as many as you can get, like basically. Yeah. But one thing I've been like talking about a little bit, but I haven't tried it. Number one is to be like a guest on podcast, which you're kind of doing right now. But like, there's a lot of podcasts out there, and if you could be an expert in a specific area, you can get links from plenty of different podcasts. All have websites. Maybe you get a little more name recognition and someone else asks you to be on their podcast. But have you ever thought about doing that? Do you think you're in a place where you could do it?
I could swear that John Dykstra had mentioned that, and I heard that was a really good idea. Yeah, I thought that turns on a light bulb. That's
cool.
I kind of wanted to before I thought about it, but I didn't act on it. I said, "Oh, nobody would be interested in me," but maybe I should actually look into it.
Yeah. And I think like what I would do for a pitch, you can try this, let me know if it works. But, you've been featured as a guest poster on a few different sites. Probably at least 3 are significant, like bigger sites, right? Like you could say, hey, I've been featured here. I've been running this blog for a while and I'd love to be a guest and talk about like one of these 2 topics. And probably, if the people that you can say you were featured on, like their blogs, if they're reputable enough, people will probably like go for it. At least chat with you to see if it's a good match. There's podcasts on like every topic, or you could even do like YouTube videos, but I think podcasts may be more effective just because it's an actual like do follow link. So,
I see. Interesting.
Yeah. And from my perspective, like if you actually land a guest post, you have to write a guest post or have it written and then rely on them to publish it. But usually podcast, a little more streamlined. There's not necessarily as much noise or effort. You just have to talk for like 30, 40 minutes, something like that. So, and you've written all that content, so it should be a no-brainer. Any other details on like link building or your experiences with a promotion?
No, I think that's all I really had about that.
Okay. Did you get into like any Pinterest or other kind of social media type stuff?
I did. Actually, I was just thinking the other day. So I hired a Canadian lady on Fiverr, somebody who had, she was a level 1 or level 2 service seller on there. And I had hired her 1 to 2 months to create pins and run that for my boards and what have you. I was thinking to go back and hire her again because it was only, I think, $50 a month.
Okay.
I may have to get Tailwind now because the trial ran out. But I still get emails and see where people were interested in the pins for my sites. Depending on what the topic is, obviously the niche. But
okay, how much traffic were you getting from Pinterest while that was running?
I think it could have been 5 to a couple thousand a month. I really had to go back and look to give you some hard numbers.
Okay, cool. That's pretty good. I've tested Pinterest a little bit and it wasn't clicking for me. I'm not 100% sure the issue because I've talked to some other people, kind of weird niches, and like they're doing really well with it. So I think like it can be hit and miss. Maybe I was doing it a little bit incorrectly or something like that. But I know I've been told many times Pinterest is a search engine. There's an algorithm behind it. And I know that over this past summer in 2019, a lot of people had a reduction in traffic from Pinterest because they adjusted their algorithm. So did you hear about that at all?
No, I vaguely remember something to that effect a while back. Yeah. I mean, I don't in my particular case, because I know other people have had much more success. I don't consider it like a primary thing that I would put above other stuff, the basics. I wouldn't do that. It's just that, it's nice to try out and see how it works out for you for a while and then decide, right?
Cool. So you quit your job. So I think that is cool. And that is an impact that the website has had on your life. But what other impacts has just like starting the site, growing, you're learning and all that stuff? Where are you at?
Oh, as far as impacts or?
Yeah, impacts. Yeah.
I feel I'm a much happier person and I'm not stressed out. And I noticed, like you said one time, I kind of started chilling out and I don't have to move around as fast when I go do stuff. I can take my time more, and I'm like much more at ease than I used to be doing the routine. I'm so grateful when I go out and I just go to run an errand. I see how bad traffic is, what people have to put up with every day. And what's also interesting is what you don't expect is the additional stuff that comes from hitting a big change or goal like this in your life. It's that it opens other doors, because when I started making enough money to leave my job, it's kind of like other ideas start popping to your head and you start thinking about all other opportunities. And, I went to Chiang Mai to learn more from people there and be around people like myself and others. And so I never would have thought about that before. If I wasn't in this, I hadn't got to this point, I'm sure I wouldn't. I probably wouldn't have had either the ambition or the motivation to go, or I would sell myself short and think I couldn't do this. Mm-hmm. But once you reach a certain level of success, I like to think it builds on itself, and I think you expand in other areas, not just in money. Don't always think about money,
Yeah. And actually, like going back to the corporate jobs and our old lives, basically, there's like an artificial ceiling of how much money you could make. So you mentioned earlier, like you can make more doing this, working less, leisurely. You can go grocery shopping or to the gym in the middle of the day or the middle of the night, whenever you want. It really doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want. But like I was looking at people that were ahead of me 10 or 15 years, and they were, there's no way I was going to make over $200,000 a year. Like, even if I like did everything and like sold my soul and like did everything, there's no way that I would make more than that. And I just can't imagine like having that artificial limit anymore. So do you have any thoughts on that? Am I off base?
Yeah, that makes so much sense, because I kind of sometimes think ideas go through my mind. And one of those was I noticed that, when I started off, I thought just getting to $100 was going to be, I was going to be lucky to do that. And it kept going and kept going. And noticed that, just like you said, other people, because for example, I met Matt Digney in person, and he just briefly told me his story. Now look at that guy, he's killing it. And it's just a matter of proving to yourself that you can do it. And once you do that, you discover, hey, you know what? There's nothing really stopping me. I've gotten this far. It's just a matter of just doing more stuff, keep going.
Awesome.
Gives you I think it gives you the mindset as well as confidence to accept that you can do more and that you deserve success. And therefore there's really nothing stopping you, as opposed to, we grow up here in the United States sometimes thinking, well, only the lucky people make a lot of money or get to win the lottery. It's such a closed mindset. You just don't really fathom that you can do all these amazing things and make this crazy amount of money until you get exposed to these ideas and good role models and what have you.
Yeah.
And do it yourself. Yeah.
And like, I think that's a good point. Like if you're around a bunch of people who, number one, don't have any idea what you're talking about, or you're trying to bring up the idea, and you'll like shoot it down and poke holes in it. In fact, I didn't even talk about it much until I was like doing pretty well. So even a lot of my friends are a couple years older and very successful in their corporate gigs and all that stuff. So I knew I had to like bring a good story to them. But so at that point, they were like, oh, that's good money. Like that's a car payment or replacement income or whatever. They're like, oh, I could appreciate that. So they didn't give me too much shit, But if you're around that and you don't have like a community, like our Facebook community, or even just like on YouTube comments, like we all kind of understand what's going on. And then you went to the Chiang Mai SEO conference. Like what was that experience like? All like-minded individuals, right?
It was like really refreshing. And there were people, not everyone, a lot of them were SEO agency people, but there were a lot of affiliate marketers as well. But everybody was just very upbeat and forward thinking and very motivated. And you could just kind of tell that everybody there was motivated to be successful and do great things. It's like, how can I say, when you go to church and you feel better when you leave. Something good rubbed off on you. Yeah, it's good. A good environment to be, because unfortunately there's a lot of negativity out there in the world today that says you can't, and this is exactly the opposite.
Very cool.
Very good for you.
I think it seems to be a pretty good conference. I've talked to a couple of people that have gone, and it's pretty big now, right?
Yeah, sold out.
Oh, really? And do you know how many attendees were there?
Oh, it was the big conference room in a nice hotel. So, I guess it might be just a few thousand, maybe. I can't remember exactly. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. That's even better. I was going to say 1,000 or something like that. So you think it's maybe bigger?
Something like that.
Okay.
But it was fairly full. It really was.
Wow. I may have to, do you have like a favorite speaker or two that you saw?
It would be impossible to say I had a favorite, but because there were so many good people. Unfortunately, Matthew Woodward didn't get to speak. I heard he got bitten by a mosquito and got sick.
Oh,
so I really liked, of course, Matt. Matt gave a very short presentation at the very beginning. His was really good. He's already talking about testing and data and cool stuff like that. And Kyle Roof was there. I was already familiar with him some, but he had more examples of keyword optimization and how Google was an algorithm that left a big impression on everybody. It was really interesting to see what he did. Jonathan Kikebush from SEO Butler had a really good one about having a team and having people work under you and systems and things like that. And gosh, there's several more I'm sure I could think of too.
Cool. Well, it's nice to hear a lot of those names, just because I kind of know them a little bit or know them pretty well. So, that's fun. I'm glad you got to quit your job in time, head out. Okay. We'll sort of transition into a couple quick hitter questions here. Mistakes, any highlights of mistakes that we can get into here?
Thinking back, I wish that I didn't spend time on the wrong things. As for example, sometimes when you're a beginner, you get these flash in the pan ideas about, I'm going to spend all this time on these colors, or I'm going to do this certain crazy thing that's cool looking, but the truth is they don't contribute to the bottom line. And that is getting more content out and increasing your visitors count, more traffic, aka to get more money. Spending time on stuff like that, time and money, I might add, for things that don't live up to promises. When I regretted that a lot, the shiny object syndrome was kind of sort of, I guess it's not exactly the same, but putting my site down and then go playing around with drop shipping, that doesn't work out, and I've squandered 2-3 months. That was one of the biggest regrets I ever had. Sometimes it's not that you can't do something at all. It's just maybe you need to put it off later until once you got the first thing working. Stay focused and keep working on something, because especially because these are so, you have a very high, very high odds of succeeding. Mm-hmm. I bought money. I spent money on some themes that were supposed to be better for Amazon conversions and all this, and turned out they were crap. And then I ended up having to do everything over again. And I was out the time in the rain. So I learned to spend money on better tools with a good reputation and a good user base where possible. That's a good piece of advice. Don't always believe the promises. Start off with something that's good enough, and you can go from there and do great things. I think that's some of the bigger ones. When I started off, also my content was pretty poor, pretty thin and weak. And I went back later and had to redo all of it. So I wished I had taken a small writing or copywriting course before I did my first couple 30, 40, whatever posts. That would have started me off on a much better foot and saved me some work, time. Yeah, that's a good one right there, I think.
Yeah, great tip on that. I mean, like you're an example of like spending the time on the content, making sure it's high quality, and then it's paying off at the end versus I actually hear from a lot of people that almost never students, by the way, but they will publish a lot of content. It's clearly not good quality because they're paying like $5 per 2,000 words or something. Definitely not good quality, maybe spun or just straight up plagiarized. But other writers like Christy, other people I've interviewed, Evan, like they're writers by trade. Like that's what they do. So I think it's a huge skill. I think like you, eventually, you wrote a lot, you got better at it. You were trying to get better. You took a copywriting course, I think, right?
To learn from Udemy. It was only $12 when I got mine.
Yeah.
Good,
Awesome. Yeah. So I think like if you have the writing skill, that's great. It's a good advantage. But if you don't, it's not like super hard. It's just like anything else. You got to practice, you got to try to get better, maybe take a course. You could probably watch like 10 YouTube videos and get like a lot of value from that too.
That's true. Actually, it's good. That's a good point.
And we'll get into it just a tiny bit, but you had another issue with hosting, which we're going to talk about in a whole other episode. But can you give us just kind of the brief overview of your hosting debacle?
Yeah. So actually that's another lesson came out of this. A couple of them actually. So the week before I was leaving for Chiang Mai, my SiteGround accounts were expiring and I wasn't going to renew because WPX hosting is advertised as being faster. And so I was in a rush to move all my sites over to the new hosting company that was new to me right before my trip. And I got it done. I got it sorted out. But then later I had problems, a lot of issues. And I wish I'd gone about things very differently. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And like I said, we'll cover this more in depth in another episode. I've had my share of hosting issues, but quick note, I love SiteGround. I'm an affiliate for SiteGround. I have several sites there. You eventually went back to SiteGround, right?
Yeah, I sure did. I was,
okay.
Yeah, as soon as I went back, everything's cool again. And
yeah. Hosting is rough because it's like, it's pretty easy when everything's going fine. But if there's any issues, it's really important to have like someone you could call and like get good support. Most of the time, it doesn't matter. Like people can set up, like I bet you and I can set up a hosting company like today. By the end of the day, we could probably like buy a reseller account or set it up on Amazon, like web services or something, and like just run our own service. And anyone can do it. It's like pretty cheap to do. But that support, that's what you pay for. That's the important part.
So true.
I'm glad you got your sites back up. And there's nothing you could do. And you were time boxed with your flights and everything. And then just quick sidebar, can you just tell the story of like your the passport stuff that you had?
Man, yeah, that was another big thing. And this was the same amount of time. So it was a boy, I tell you, what a fun month that was. Yeah, just a couple of days before my trip, I went and got my, I keep it in a safe place, storage. I went to get it out of the storage room, and I could have sworn it didn't expire until 2020. And I looked at it, and it expired some time back. So, and I only had a couple of days before I flew out on the following Wednesday at lunchtime. So I didn't know what to do. I was panicking, and it turns out there's an expedited service. It wasn't cheap, but you can do an expedited, send your stuff to them, and they can go in place of you in person and renew your passport. And I did that. And not only that, one lady was really nice. And even though it was going to come back in the morning of my flight, which is, to be honest, that's just cutting it way too close, especially driving downtown Atlanta. she was really nice and even bumped it up the day before, and I got it the day before, and I was good to go. But
wow.
Take my advice, check in every once in a while on dates and stuff. I tell you, man.
That's crazy, man. Yeah. And we haven't done any international travel in a little while. We've had a dog for years and stuff. So we typically, and we're like codependent, so we don't travel overseas that much anymore, like currently. But yeah, my passport expired, but my wife and I roughly had around the same expiration. So like last year, we weren't planning on traveling anywhere, but we were like, let's get them renewed. We'll get it taken care of. So we got plenty of time. So ours are good to go. Everyone set a reminder for your passport. You don't want to be in that position. What a stressful week you're working on hosting and a passport.
I forget what else went wrong, but something else was going on too.
Yeah.
It must not have been that bad. I didn't die. So
yeah. You made it through on the other side. It's totally fine.
It's got better. Yeah.
Okay. So for other people that want to replicate your success, do you have any tips, any quick tips?
Well, if they're not already a member of your 5-figure niche site course, I do definitely recommend it. Because I like to point out to people there's a lot to make an affiliate site and making money, but I can't stress enough how the fundamentals are what make the wheels turn. Like the keyword research is, especially these days, you'll find what I found was in so many niches out there, there's just so much competition. And to an absolute beginner at first, once you understand how it works, you say, wow, I'll never be able to do this. But if you have a low competition keyword approach, keyword to ratio is a good rule of thumb to help you pick keywords. Some very good things are possible. It's possible to succeed, even in a moderately, fairly competitive niche. It is. And you'll just follow. You need to have a good plan and consistently take action. Don't sit on your behind. You have to make sacrifices sometimes. I gave up going out and having fun or taking some short trips and this, that, and the other. Even my second side, actually, I had so few vacation days in my old job, but I only had that year that I started that site. I took all 7 of my vacation days. All I did was write content for my second site when I launched it. That's all I did. But I was willing to do that. Sometimes that's what it takes. It's short. You're paying short term for long-term gains. So it's okay it's going to be tough for a short amount of time, but just stay dedicated and you'll be glad you did.
Well said. Thanks a lot, Marty. Appreciate your time here. And everybody look out for future interviews. And if you have questions, you can leave a comment or you can shoot an email to feedback@Doug.Show and we'll route it to Marty. Maybe we'll answer it over the next interview.
Be happy to. I'd like that.
All right. Thanks, man. Thanks again to Marty. And like I mentioned in the interview, we got to meet in person, have a drink, have a couple beers. So that was pretty fun. And I believe you could probably see Marty if you check out the YouTube video, right? The YouTube video out there for the Atlanta meetup and the recap. So there's a little bit of him. I think he's eating a burrito or something like that. So you can check that out if you want to see him watch me talk. So that was a weird way to pitch that video. I'm not 100% sure when that'll be published, but it'll be out there. So if you are interested, you can see Marty. He's like in the background of that video, which the video is fine. The audio sounds pretty good. We'll see how it goes. I'm not sure if anyone will enjoy that, but I did bring my recorder and the DSLR to capture that meetup. So you can check it out if you want. Like I mentioned, I'm going to answer a couple questions here. So Mike asked this, and I think I've answered a couple of Mike's questions in the past, but here it is. Should you build more than one site in the same niche to take over more of the SERPs? SERPs stands for Search Engine Result Page. So for example, Mike says, let's say I'm going to change his example since I know that some people are in this niche. So I'll change it to something arbitrary. Let's say I have a site about wireless mice and I rank number 1 for best 3-button wireless mouse. So should I keep building sites that are in that same niche? So you could. I have heard people talk about this strategy before, where basically a specific niche is a good one, keywords already, and why not just build multiple sites in that same niche? You can, cross promote, you can link between the two potentially. So I think that is an okay strategy. I've never executed it. I have heard people do that. And I think the economy of scale where you are working on the same thing multiple times, you can iterate, do a better job. You have more data across the two sites or more. So I think it is a valid way to do that. And you could just own more of, page 1 for various terms. The secondary question that Mike asks is it says, would you also, if you had the confidence to start a whole site that is just about 3-button wireless mice? This site could also talk about some accessories that can be used with 3-button wireless mice or mouses or mice. I'm not sure the actual way to say that. I think it's mice. But let's move on aside from the plural form of the made up site, because again, I just filled in some stupid example here. So basically he's asking, would I do a site that is super narrow? And the answer is probably not. I enjoy the kind of work that I do. I like the internet marketing and niche sites, and I like doing stuff, but just kicking up another site sounds kind of boring to me, especially one that's super narrow. And I would prefer something that's just can grow bigger. I would probably spend more time on the site that's already doing well versus starting a very small site. Because if you play this out, this is what you end up with. So I have a site that's doing pretty well. I'm making money from it. And then I start creating smaller sites that generally just focus on a very small portion, a very small aspect of one of the products. And then maybe there are 100 products that you could do that with, and you end up with 100 of these little sites. And the problem is it's annoying to deal with the admin for each one of those little sites. It kind of sucks. It's boring. It's not very fun to me. You could have maybe some sort of a VA that specializes in helping you keep all the sites up to date as far as plugin updates, theme updates, WordPress updates, all the admin stuff. You also would have to pay for each one of the domains. And I know you didn't ask this specifically, Mike, but if you play it out, right, you end up with a whole bunch of sites. Now, back in the day, when I first started studying affiliate marketing and niche sites, there were several people who basically would create, I'm using air quotes, micro niche sites, right? Micro niche sites. And they're like, hey, if I can build one site that makes $1 a day, then I could build 400, and that is $400 per day. And if I just scale this out, it works. And it did work in 2010 to 2013 or so. It kind of stopped working right when I got started in 2013. And my time frames may be a little bit off because I'm talking about things that happened before I was even aware of making money online. The point is, there's a lot of overhead. It's boring work. I don't want to do boring work. I want to do more interesting things. So I've branched out in different areas. This is not part of the answer to the question, but I've branched out in different areas that are more interesting to me, like this podcast or YouTube videos or, financial things, which I haven't done any specific episodes other than my, me driving an old truck around and the value of driving an old car and investing the money instead of spending it on a new fancier car with power locks and power windows. Who needs that? Or like a key fob, the keyless entry system. I've never had a car with that, if you can imagine. Weird, huh? I mean, even the shitty, rental cars are going to have keyless entry. But anyway, the overhead, all the little admin, all that stuff, super boring. And then when you play it out, it's just not fun. But the root of your question, Mike, yeah, if you're like, hey, this is a good niche, I'm going to create a whole other site, basically copy the keywords, maybe branch out a little bit. I would encourage that, like branch out a little bit. Because if you own, if you rank for different keywords and maybe there's a lot of overlap with the content, that's cool. You could own more real estate over there on page 1, but at the same time, like you kind of want to rank like number 1 for certain terms because that's going to bring in more traffic than if you rank number 2 for various, terms. Probably going to be able to get that economy of scale and be able to make it worthwhile. And you probably already have writers in place that are familiar with that content. You can just do more faster. I think if budget is no object, then you could branch out that way. So, Mike, I hope that was helpful. I think if you ask around and study a little bit with some Google searches, you probably can find some people that swear by it, that talk about, hey, if you find a good niche, then just try to saturate the market, build a bunch of sites out there. And I think I've seen this out there where I see one site that looks super similar to another couple sites. And I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if these 3 sites are all owned by the same person and they just kind of saturated the whole market. So anyway, don't forget to check out Marty's other interviews if you want to hear the progression. Super cool. Congratulations to Marty for being able to leave his full-time job, an engineering gig. And funny thing, there's a lot of engineers, there's a lot of IT kind of folks in the audience, and a lot of the students in the course are indeed like engineers or in IT somehow. There's a big spread. I mean, there's stay-at-home moms, there are construction workers, there's musicians, there's all sorts of folks out there. But probably because I came from the IT world, the audience self-selects, and a lot of you that are listening to this are indeed in IT somehow or another. In IT, apparently, like many other careers out there, people don't like it that much. So you end up trying to figure out side hustles and other things you could do. In this sort of affiliate marketing where there's a little technical aspect, I mean, it's perfect. It's kind of fun to look at code every now and then. I understand some of the technical aspects of implementing certain pieces of functionality on the site, trying to test it a little bit, knowing that there's going to be migration issues because no migration is clean. We all know that. Nothing goes as smoothly as you think. And just that sort of testing mindset, that like process-oriented project management, all those sort of things that we learn in IT, like super helpful as you're working online. Big leg up for other, compared to other people who maybe don't have any experience with the technical aspects of websites and all that. So anyway, Marty's crushing it out there. Thanks for joining me, and we will catch you on the next episode.